chat in your. Welcome to another Zoom call. We have a number of questions to get through. Just a reminder again, please ask your questions on the member site. And a reminder that you guys all have the ability to get on any of our courses. Just use your same username and password as you do for the member site. The one that I think would be most helpful is maybe the Read Your Genes course if you really want to dig into your genetics. And the 7 phases of detoxification can be interesting, I think, for you. Most of you know everything in the Stop Fighting Cancer course. Certainly don't need the Lyme course. Okay, here's a question. This might have been from last week, but what are your thoughts on the CENSA test or scan? Those are electrodermal screening tests. There's multiple devices out there for electrodermal screening. It measures frequency. Is there benefit? Sure, I think there's benefit to that. Do you diagnose off of that? No. So you can do one of those electrodermal screening tests, CENSA, or there's a bunch of different names of them out there depending on the device themselves. And it comes up, mold and parasites and this and that and that. Does that mean you have that? No, it doesn't mean you have that. It means that that frequency came up. And then there's a treatment modality to it that you use that frequency on a bunch of different acupuncture points, and it can be really helpful. But you have to be careful if the practitioner crosses the line and says, this frequency came up, therefore you have this disease. There's zero correlative evidence of that. So that's where I think there's danger in crossing that line, and there's danger in that's I think sometimes these kind of things are what give alternative practitioners bad names, because they are diagnosing off of things that you shouldn't diagnose off of. And I don't think that's appropriate. There's no evidence that that's true. The companies will tell you you don't diagnose off of it, but practitioners tend to carry it into that next step, which is very dangerous. I get members contacting us saying things like, oh, I did this certain electrodermal screening and it said I have these parasites, so now I want to get some nutrition for those parasites. Well, it doesn't mean you have those parasites. So again, you can't stretch that just because the frequency came up positive doesn't mean you have the disease. So that is really far-fetched and incorrect and improper and possibly malpractice. It's just wrong to stretch that. Can you please speak more on the topic of spike proteins, evidence how they're passed from vax to unvax? I'm not going to read the rest of this question because I really can't speak much on that. Go to this. This is our sister website. It's called My Hope for Lyme. And on the My Hope for Lyme, it's myhopeforlyme.com. You can look at the blogs, and I have written multiple blogs on spike proteins. I have not done a whole lot of research on spike proteins for quite some time since the vaccine came out. But personally, I'm very much against the vaccine. I'm very much against, even though you are vaccinated, you're still exposed to spike proteins. There's no one that could possibly give you a valid argument that it's not increasing the prevalence of different cancers, putting a bunch of people that have had a diagnosis of cancer on a more rapid track of metastasis. There's a lot of evidence that shows that is being buried. You're going to have to search different websites and different information. And on that blog post, I have some data where I pulled the information on spike proteins, how they may damage your DNA, how it increases your cancer risk. It increases if you already have a diagnosis of cancer. So go on the myhopeforlyme.com go to the blog, and I have multiple blog posts on that. Do you have any thoughts on TrueRife's new jackhammer amplification system? This is another question we had just last week or the week before. Again, the jackhammer increases the output of the bulb, so you can use it with the hammer bulb. They're not very expensive. To me, the only real benefit of that is if you're using it during the day and you're up and you're moving around and the bulb is, away from you, and you're not, you're not able to have the bulb right next to you. So if you're having the bulb right next to you with the hammer bulb, again, any increase in power, is wasted because it's powerful enough by itself to go for those frequencies to go through you. You don't need them to go through the adjacent wall and into the next room, So if the use of the jackhammer, I think, comes in with, well, I'm running them during the day and I have the bulb sitting on my desk because I get up and off my desk to do different things. Well, that's where the jackhammer would be more appropriate. But if you're able to have the bulb right next to you, then I don't think it's necessary. In order to fight back, what basis in law forces your clinic to remove fenbendazole products from your site? Because I mentioned last week that we had to remove all the fenbendazole products from our site. Now, we can still sell them, but we can't have them on our site, and we can't have any data on our website regarding them. And the rule of law is the FDA. So the Food and Drug Administration controls the use of supplements and off-label drugs. Fenbendazole is a drug, but it's not a human drug. So there was a gray area. We were using it for cancer on humans, and since it's not a human drug, the source that we were using, we are in kind of a gray area of being able to actually sell it on our site. I knew what was going to happen because since COVID, they have been given a lot more power. The CDC, all the three-letter named governmental control agencies have been given much more power, and they've been able to come after, places like us in different ways. Now, I do believe that we're protected, but we do have to play by their rules. I can't fight that and say, no, we're not going to, agree with your stipulation. The FDA will just fine you. There's no court of law. I mean, I could get an attorney and try to sue them back. There's no way you're going to win. So on something like that, it's just not worth the fight. So for those of you that are on fenbendazole, you just call the clinic and order from us directly. We'll put it in your next order. The protection that we have from the Pastoral Medical Society does not override the ability to go against an FDA order. The truth is that you can Google, I just did this last week, fenbendazole and cancer, and you can't find anything anymore. So they literally came against every clinic that was selling fenbendazole, and you can't even find Joe Tippin's information. He still has his website up, but you have to go directly to his website. They shadow banned his website, so you can't find him on Google. Google buried him. Is that legal? No. Is it ethical? Of course not. Is it moral? Absolutely not. But Google hides under their stipulation that they're a private entity and they can do whatever they want. So, well, it's insane. So I remember I used to see an MD who embraced alternative practices, who led his licensed lab and made me sign a waiver each time we met. Can that no longer be done? Well, yes. So we're still, I don't have any fear that we're going to be out of business. we're going to still do what we're doing. We just have to take precautions to protect ourselves. And one of the things is, first of all, let's take a step back. The FDA um, governs the sale of supplements and everything. And I know a lot, I've toured a lot of the supplement companies that we sell supplements to, or sell their supplements. And I've toured their facilities and stuff. And they, talk to the managers and the owners of those companies. And they say all the time it's at least every 3 to 6 months, they get letters from the FDA and inspections from the FDA and surprise inspections from the FDA and all that kind of stuff. And you just have to deal with it. It's just part of doing business. It's just dealing with the government. Then they just make the changes that they have to make, and they are able to avoid the fines, and it's just part of doing business. And so it's nothing that concerns me or worries me, but it just saddens me. It just really, it's sorrowful, because it's like the government has to put their big foot in everything, which they are in bed with the pharmaceutical industry. So anything that's going to impede against what the pharmaceutical industry is doing, well, they're going to try to shut it down. I mean, it's just no different than what happened in the 1950s, where they shut down Hoxsey and they shut down Gerson. And these people literally had the chains on their clinic. Literally, they came to work in the morning and Hoxsey, and there was chains on the outside door of his clinic. Rife, all his stuff was confiscated and taken. How do you fight back against the government? I mean, yeah, you can file a lawsuit and you might win, but it'll be 10 years later, after they appeal it 10 times, that you're just wiped out. You're just financially wiped out. So you just try to do what you can and know that God's going to protect you. And I have complete faith that he's going to protect us. But it's like, okay, we can't have fenbendazole on our site. We can't have anything about Joe Tippins or fenbendazole on our blog post anymore. So much for the freedom of speech. But they have otherwise we're just going to get completely shadow banned by Google, and you won't be able to even find our clinic. So it's very sad. It is really sad. I like to contact my senators and congressmen on this topic, two of whom I know personally, on help get elected, which will hopefully make a little bit of a difference. Maybe, and I appreciate that. I really, really do. These draconian practices by government are basically such that they threaten my life and others, and I just won't stand for it. Well, I am in full agreement, but I don't think your local senators or congressmen really, unless you had a majority that were against this, they're not going to do anything, and their pockets are lined. I actually treated once a person who was a U.S. Congressperson. And this person was telling me that they had to raise $4 million by next week. And this person was very stressed out. And I'll never forget talking to that person and saying, what do you mean you have to raise $4 million? Oh, yeah. The party that this person was represented by said, I have to raise $4 million by Tuesday. And it's like, okay, if you have to raise that kind of money, that at that speed, you start taking it from pretty much anybody. And who has the money? The pharmaceutical companies. These people are bought and paid for. No matter how honest and ethical, and maybe I'm being a little cynical, but no matter how honest and ethical they are, the pharmaceutical companies help them get elected. And the human mind is easily persuaded to justify maybe poor ethics. And you'd say, well, the pharmaceutical companies, yeah, they're bad and they're in control. They squash the alternatives. But, look at all the good they do. Look at all the people they employ. And look at all the Americans that are at work because of them. And, it's easy to justify, evil when when you're when they're the ones greasing the wheel. It's really difficult to fight back against this stuff. I appreciate it. I appreciate all you're doing. Please don't use my name. I know you wouldn't. This person wouldn't, but it just gives the evil that's out there more power to destroy us even more. I don't worry about us. We're not going to be, um, you know, out of business or anything like that. We just have to follow their guidelines and you know, it just is what it is. Again, I'm just saddened. It just saddens me, you know, that all through this whole COVID thing, you couldn't even talk about, you know, alternative things, or you would get banned. You'd get. We've had videos pulled off of YouTube. We've had, and we haven't even gotten into the COVID thing. That's why we had to put this article on COVID on a sister site, because I didn't want our Connors Clinic site to get completely shadow banned. Um, so yeah, it's just a sad state of affairs that we're in right now. This colon cancer study got a lot of publicity a few months back. It's about the PD-1 blockade in mismatch repair. The study started with anti-PD-1 monoclonal antibody, which was administered every 3 weeks for 6 months for patients with mismatch pair deficient stage 2 or stage 3 rectal adenocarcinoma. It was so successful that chemotherapy and resection was unnecessary for all 14 patients in the study. Well, there you have it right there. It was successful that chemotherapy was unnecessary. It's going to be a study that probably isn't going to be read by a lot of people, because it's not going to become standards of care, because chemotherapy makes money. So, gosh, that sounds so cynical, but it just is true. So for those who aren't familiar with what any of this is talking about, this is really a study about immunotherapy. So the PD-1 receptor is on T cells. So your T cells are one of your main killer cells of cancer. But cancer, again, remember I've said this 100 times, one of the reasons why your immune system isn't killing cancer is because cancer is your own cells. And your own cells have this connection to the PD-1 receptor that basically blocks a T cell from killing it. Because because all your old cells have this. So it keeps you from developing autoimmune diseases. It keeps your immune system from just killing your self tissue. Otherwise, if you didn't have that, your immune system would just kill you, and you would have been dead at 2 weeks of age and never lived to adulthood, because your immune system would have killed you. But thank goodness your body has these protective measures to protect your immune system from killing self tissue. And one of those protective measures is the PD-1 receptor on activated T cells. Now, there's a test that is done. So that's where immunotherapy. So immunotherapy is not chemotherapy. Immunotherapy is another drug. So one of the brand names is Keytruda. So let's talk about Keytruda. That's a drug that has an anti-PD-1 receptor device. That's what the drug does, is it blocks the PD-1 receptor. So activated T cells, your immune cells, will kill the tumor cells. Well, that sounds like a great idea. Well, it is a great idea. The problem is that you can't have secondary negative effects of it, because it doesn't just kill the tumor, your activated T cells, it starts killing self tissue everywhere. And you start developing autoimmune diseases, elsewhere in the body. Now, some people can tolerate that just fine, and the immunotherapy works really well. Some people don't tolerate immunotherapy just fine, and they can end up with, anything that ends with an itis. So colitis, you'll get this inflammatory colon and diarrhea and bloody stools and all this, or you get, if you already have an autoimmune disease, it can make it much worse. So some people do not tolerate immunotherapy well. Some people, hey, they can deal with those symptoms, and you can take different nutrition and even medication for those other symptoms if in effect the immunotherapy is stimulating your activated T cells to kill tumor cells and you're getting regression of the tumor, well, then there's a trade-off there and there's a benefit to that. Now, there's a test that's done to see if your cancer is really, that's a major a problem with your cancer is that your activated T cells are being turned off by your tumor cells through that PD-1 receptor. That's what's called the PD-1 blockade. Now, if that's not true, if you don't test for that, then they won't administer immunotherapy to you. They'll say it won't work for you. Now, the question that is being asked here is, they actually, in one of the studies, they actually did, they administered still immunotherapy to these people that did not show that high PD-1 blockade, and it still had some effect. And this person is, the question this person is asking, yet another doctor pointed out that Dr. Moss said that this assumption is not correct, and it may be appropriate for people who are not genetically eligible, meaning that if that doesn't even show in you, again, they won't give you the drug, but actually, if they still gave you the drug, it might actually still help you. So, and I would agree with that, but they have their stipulations. They won't administer immunotherapy, and these people, because you don't show positive in their test, and you might have to just search for an oncologist that will basically give it to you kind of off-label. So now they're probably out there, and you can certainly try to do it. Understand it's still, immunotherapy can still have its side effects and such, but I still think we've had patients that have done immunotherapy that have done really poorly with it, but we've had more patients that have done immunotherapy that did really well with it. So I'm actually still quite a fan of immunotherapy. I know that chemo does not kill cancer stem cells or circulating tumor cells. Do we take supplements to help build the immune system so that they can help? Yes, that's exactly what you're doing. That's plus you're using the right to help stimulate the attack of circulating tumor cells. And back to this, that's exactly why you're using the right too. At least one reason. If you cause disruption in that tumor cell over and over and over and over again, because you're hitting it with frequencies, that can override, in my opinion, that PD-1 receptor issue. That's why you would use the right. One of the reasons why you use the right, because it can help still stimulate attack to the tumor, to the cancer site of your immune system, because you're causing your immune system to take another look at another look at another look at this, and it can override that turn-off receptor, that PD-1 receptor on activated T cells. My hemoglobin tested today at 7.9, and I'm scheduled for surgery in 3 weeks. They want to bring my hemoglobin either up with either a blood transfusion or supplementation. I know cancer cells feed on iron. What would we recommend in this situation? I'd recommend a blood transfusion. So there's nothing that's going to raise your hemoglobin faster than a transfusion. Supplementation of iron might slowly creep it up. If you're going to use supplementation of iron, use artemisinin with the iron. Take artemisinin with the iron because cancer cells can feed on iron, and it tends to drag artemisinin with it. So if you're going to take iron, take artemisinin as well. But nothing will raise your hemoglobin faster than a transfusion. Is it possible that when taking supplements, it could cause kidney pain? At least that is where I think it may be. So I might have pain in the back flank. Seems like some days after I take them, the pain is more intense than others. I'm just not sure where to start when I do not notice it every day. Currently, I take about 15 different things. I'd highly suggest that you make sure you're taking your supplements with your food. I don't want to say supplements couldn't cause kidney pain. I don't, if you just take your supplements and you have that pain, I would say no, absolutely not. Um, because it takes time for those supplements to absorb and and then circulate through your bloodstream. And if there was something that was irritating your kidneys, it would have to be, at least a couple hours after you take your supplements that you would notice the kidney pain. If you notice flank pain after you take your supplements, it could be referred pain from the stomach or the gut, meaning just there's some irritation maybe of the capsules. Try opening the capsules up if they're not time released supplements, opening them up and putting them in a shake or something and taking them that way. Sometimes the capsules, even though they're natural capsules, can cause irritation to the stomach, and you could get referred pain to the back. And you might feel like kidney pain, but it's actually probably just referred pain to the back. Okay, question from the chat. Hi, Dr. Connors. I'm about to take the 4 main off-label medications from Care Oncology. That is metformin. Would these drugs interfere with my current supplement protocol, such as berberine, CLA? No, they shouldn't. None of them should interfere with that. The only one that if you're taking the doxycycline from Care Oncology, I would take that maybe away from any probiotics because it will just kill them. So maybe take that at least 4 hours away from the probiotics. But like the metformin and such, no, should not be any issue with that. I'm considering doing another tissue biopsy endoscopy this time to be able to put my specific type of cancer out there to see if there could be any specific type of immunotherapy that might work for me. So it's just what we were talking about today. Does this sound like a smart thing to do? Sure, for sure. I think absolutely. If your cancer is not responding to something you're doing currently, it's always good to look at something else. Um, if you are responding currently and you're doing well, still not a bad idea to at least have your options open in case something turns for the worse or something, worst case scenario. So I think it's always wise to be looking. Can berberine cause bloating? Well, berberine is the best supplement to kill H. pylori. H. pylori is Helicobacter pylori that is very common in the gut that can cause all sorts of problems. It can be a cause of stomach cancer. It is the cause of all stomach ulcers and duodenal ulcers. It is H. pylori can disrupt cause dysbiosis in the gut. It can cause skin rashes. It is one of the top 5 causes of cardiovascular disease and the endothelial damage. So H. pylori is a major player, and it's basically ubiquitous. H. pylori in balance is a part of our flora, our normal microbiota, but it gets out of balance very quickly and very easily. So if berberine is causing bloating, my first suggestion is it's quite possible that you have H. pylori also. And H. pylori can be, and usually often is, completely independent of a person's cancer. It's a secondary morbidity that most people have. And I take berberine on a fairly regular basis because, my dad had a history of heart disease. And again, what's the number one cause of endothelial damage and heart issues is H. pylori. It's one of the top causes. So I take berberine because it's a great thing for that. Berberine is also fantastic to help lower blood sugar. So it's really good for cancer patients. Berberine is, I tell you, berberine honestly is one of my favorite supplements, maybe other than mushrooms, So if you're getting bloating from the berberine, I'd say that probably is a good thing. Make sure you're taking some fiber, make sure you're doing coffee enemas. If you're constantly getting bloating after being on berberine for months and months, make sure you then just try taking it with some food or something like that. Again, I don't know if the berberine is causing the bloating, but if it certainly can cause bloating of some sorts if a person, especially if a person has H. pylori. Any other questions? Should I work up to my 3 times per day? Yeah. So it's always good too if a supplement, if you think that something is causing issues, you titrate that supplement. Oh my goodness, this supplement really gives me a stomach ache or something. Well, drop it down to none for a few days, then go to one if you're supposed to be taking 3 a day. Do one for a week or so, and then titrate up to two, and things like that. And also remember that if you're supposed to be taking 3 a day based upon the recommendations, you split them up through the day. So you're not taking 3 all at once. Now, it's quite often I might take 3 berberine all at once, but you might be much more sensitive to anything than I might be. So, but again, if it's recommended that you take 3 a day of anything, you should try to split those up throughout the day because all these things have a half-life in your system and they can be gone relatively quick. Okay, we will finish for the day. I will see you in 2 days, the day before Thanksgiving. I hope you guys all have a great Thanksgiving planned with your families. Um, there's a lot to be thankful for. So the more we can be thankful and grateful, even in difficult times, um, it just brings us health, and it's so good for us. So keep a thankful heart, keep a grateful heart. Ask God to reveal in you any bitterness that needs to be dealt with, um, that He can heal you of. So thank you very much. Love you all. Be praying for you, and we'll see you in 2 days.